Hello, welcome to Holistically Speaking. I am Morella DeVoe, your host. Our mission with Holistically Speaking is to be the avenue through which the voices of holistic health reach you at the time you need it most. And today, it's Earth Day. We are doing a live show. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And for those of you watching, you can call us at 802-651-0589. My guest today is Kathryn Blume, and we are talking about Vermontivate. Thank you for joining me, Kathy. I'm so happy.
Absolute pleasure.
So happy to have you. And it was so fun when I invited you to come and do the show, and you said, perfect, because it's Earth Day.
Yeah.
And so when we realized that we were going to be doing the show on Earth Day, I thought that it made sense to do it live and to give viewers an opportunity to call you and ask you questions about Vermontivate, or as the environmental activist that I know you are, maybe people will have questions for you about Earth Day in general, or
whatever's going on in the state, I'll answer it if I can.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I want to help viewers get to know you a little better, and because I know that Vermontivate comes from who you are and how you got to create this wonderful award-winning game.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your story and who is the person behind this thing called Vermontivate?
Well, I was born in a log cabin I built myself. I grew up in Oregon, and certainly in a family that did a lot of camping and hiking and being in the outdoors, and so I was always interested in the natural world. I thought, in 5th grade, I thought I wanted to be a marine biologist until I realized I was afraid of deep water, and that would kind of put the kibosh on that.
That wouldn't work.
When I was in college, I ended up designing my own degree in environmental studies and theater. Mm-hmm. Because those are the two things that I cared about the most. And I thought, most people don't address environmental issues until they become crises, at which point it's too late, you're in scrambling mode. And I thought if you could create really great art, and theater is such an incredible art form because it really touches people on an emotional and an intellectual level at the same time. People go to the theater expecting to identify with the characters they see on stage. They expect to have a cathartic experience. And I thought if you could create really great art that was relevant, then all of a sudden you would build pathways of relationship between the topics that you're talking about, the characters, and your audience, so that when they encountered something like it in the real world, they would have a pre-existing relationship in response to that stuff. Easier said than done. But over the years, I worked for environmental groups, I did theater, and then I created a one-woman show in 2006 called The Boycott, and it was a spoof on the ancient Greek comedy Lysistrata. 2,500-year-old ancient Greek play in which the women of Greece stop a war by refusing to have sex until the men quit fighting.
Oh, yeah.
Very funny. And it turns out sex strikes happen in the real world all the time, and they always work. But I never, people like said, well, you should start a sex strike to combat global warming. I was like, I don't want to do that. But I wrote a play, a one-woman show.
Yes, I don't know that we would want to sign up for that one.
No one would want to sign up for that, and people would be mad at me if I tried to start, and I don't want to sign up for it. So I figured better to write a play. Right. So it's the story of the First Lady of the U.S., the President's wife, launching a sex strike to combat climate change. And I produced it here in Vermont. I took it to New York. I did an off-Broadway run. And then I ended up taking the show to Copenhagen during the climate talks in 2009. Oh, how great. And I was performing at an ancillary event called Klima Forum, which was like a world social forum. And I had a blast. It was an amazing experience. And I got to see the UN negotiations, which are highly dysfunctional. And I came away thinking, clearly, the world is not going to solve climate change without the United States. And we are usually getting in the way of solutions rather than propagating solutions. Clearly, the United States needs some leadership. Where are we going to get it? Vermont. And I thought, Vermont, we have all of this great stuff going on. We've got all these nonprofits and fiery individuals and state agencies who are all really concerned about these issues, but there didn't seem to be a sense of collective purpose and mission around all this stuff. It didn't seem like we had, and still don't really have, any kind of high-level leadership.
I was just going to say, that doesn't seem to be like there's the leadership of Vermont taking this on, like, okay.
No, we need a kind of like Churchillian figure, and like, we'll fight them in the trenches. And I thought, how do I help Vermont kind of congeal, as it were, like get its act together collectively behind a sense of mission and purpose and drive and meaning? And I had no idea. And I thought there's also all of the people, the regular people in the world who, whether or not they're working on this stuff professionally, a lot of people say they care, but a lot of people also feel like, I don't know what to do. I change my light bulbs. I drive a Prius. I eat organic. What else could there be?
I didn't blow dry my hair.
Didn't blow my hair today, right. And people need pathways created for them so that they know how to participate. And I thought, what would it take to pull all this stuff together? I had no idea. And then I heard a TED Talk by a woman named Jane McGonigal. And Jane is a game designer, and she's all about games for good. And her talk said
I just recently watched
it's
that.
a really famous TED Talk. It was sort of like the brain one. Everybody loves it.
Yeah.
And she said, gaming culture has all these elements to it, which could potentially serve us when we're trying to solve big problems. She said gamers expect to be given an almost impossible task as the primary objective of the game. They expect to fail a lot before they succeed, and that's okay.
Right.
They expect to employ heroic amounts of creativity and collaboration in the service of accomplishing their objectives. And I thought, okay, I'm not a gamer. I've got Scrabble on my phone. That's about as far as it goes. And I thought, clearly a lot of people out there do love games. And so maybe this could be a good way of going about it. So I started calling people. And I have a friend at Ben & Jerry's, and he agreed to provide an ice cream party for whoever won the game. And other people sort of jumped on board. And in the spring of 2012, we launched the first round of Vermontivate, which is basically a community climate and sustainability game to get people on board to take as many actions as possible in their personal life, in their communities, that make a difference.
Right.
And they accumulate points. Their points go to their team. And in the beginning, it was just towns, and then it was towns and schools, and now it's all different kinds of teams. And then the winning team now actually gets a cash prize to help it achieve whatever goals they're setting up during the course of the game. So we've had things like the little town of Calais is a mighty Vermontivate player.
Oh, wow.
And the first year they played, they said, there's all this traffic that goes back and forth between Calais and Montpelier. There's no public transportation. And it seems wrong. So they decided that they were going to start something called the Hitching Post, which was a designated spot where you could pick up a ride.
Oh, interesting.
That didn't happen, but they started a town transportation committee instead, and they've been working with the state to figure out what would it take to get them public transportation. They're also talking about having collectively owned scooters that they can ride back and forth. They want to start a community root cellar, and all of that stuff comes out of their playing Vermontivate. Because when you gamify something, when you put it in that sort of carrot stick reward competition framework, all of a sudden people are a lot more willing to do stuff that they know they should do but haven't been able to do for one reason or another. And we say, okay, your challenge this week is to go find that last light bulb and change it, or don't eat sugar for a week, or eat 10% local food, or start composting your food. Whatever it might be, people are a lot more inclined to do it if they're going to get points and they could win something.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I thought is so genius about Vermontivate. And I've been through the site and looked at different things, but people love a challenge, and it's like that thing, like we're competing, and so the things that, like you're saying, that you wouldn't normally do because you're playing this game and you want to earn points, you're going to do them, and you're going to say, okay, what's the thing that we can do to beat the, and it's so constructive.
And the other piece of the puzzle is that climate change is enormous. It's overwhelming. It's a big bummer,
Right.
And, some people say, well, is it happening? Will it happen? There's scientific doubt that's been sown. The truth is, it's real and it's happening right now.
Right.
It's not this thing that's far off in the future. And I remember when I first heard about it, 20-something years ago when Bill McKibben wrote The End of Nature. It was his first book about climate change. And he was talking about these dramatic changes and the ice caps melting and the sea levels rising. And I thought, wow, it's a good thing that that's so hundreds of years in the future, because I don't want to live to see something like that.
No, it just...
And it was actually, that was the first moment where I didn't want to live forever. I thought, if living forever means I'm going to see this, I don't want to live forever. And here it is, it's happening now. The ice caps are melting, the sea levels are rising, and we are in the middle of it.
Well, and the thing is, for the people who might doubt it, for whatever reasons, because then there's also, it's like, it's like the ice age, it's going to happen anyway. But whatever the reasons are, just this weekend, I watched a video of a massive, what they call calving of the ice mass in the Arctic, and how, enormous, like the size of Manhattan. There's this whole piece of the ice cap just all of a sudden breaking off and rolling into the ocean, and you can watch it happening. And they said, it happened over the course of, say, like an hour and a half or something like that. And you can watch this video, you can probably Google it, and it's happening, and you can see it happening today.
Well, even in Vermont, where our winters are a little bit shorter, but still we've had this cold weather, we've had the polar vortex, we have last couple of winters we've had all this freezing cold weather, but in Alaska, it's been warmer than it's ever been in the wintertime. And I know the Iditarod was run on mud this year.
Yeah.
And there are Native American communities in Alaska that are already crumbling into the sea. Right. Because the climate is changing so much. But in Vermont, we've got ticks, we've got Lyme disease, which is not something that we ever had before. When I moved here 20 years ago, that wasn't an issue. We have invasive species. We have extreme weather events. And those are the kind of things that we have to contend with.
Right.
And we were freezing this winter, but the rest of the world was baking. And once again, 2014 was the warmest year on record, and 2015 is on track for that as well. And I think we get a little bit complacent in Vermont because we're not experiencing the drought in California, the wildfires in the West. We're not experiencing extreme heat waves, at least not right now.
But the interesting thing, because here I think I would disagree with you. I actually don't think that Vermont is complacent, especially if you take it in the context of the rest of the country. I had an interesting experience going to Arizona in October, where my sister and I took off from Burlington Airport. We look out the window, and there are these enormous solar farms that you can't see from anywhere because they're on these fields. Yeah. And of course, Vermont is gray, like 60% of the time or something. And then we landed in Phoenix, wide open desert, not a cloud to be seen, and not a single solar farm. Yeah. We could not find a solar panel in the middle of the desert. It's like where there's no business.
You'd think that would be the place to stick them.
Right. Exactly. So I guess I do agree that there's a lot that we can still do, a lot that we need to do, which is why we're having the show.
Right, of course.
But I think that Vermont is kind of leading the pack in many ways.
It's really interesting. Yes, of course we are. And it's easy for me to say we're being complacent because I live on the leading edge of this stuff all the time. Right. And so I want to run around and shake people and say, why aren't you doing this? No, there's a lot that's going on that's really remarkable. But what's interesting is seeing where the resistance lies.
Right.
It's been very clear on a national level that like a carbon tax, carbon pollution tax is one of the most useful tools for helping communities reduce the amount of fossil fuel that they're using and then build a fund to help them move forward to weatherize homes and build the infrastructure for a post-carbon economy. And there's legislation going through the State House right now about a carbon tax, and the amount of resistance to that is enormous. Or, I live in Charlotte, and there are solar farms there. There are people who are very interested in that kind of thing, but there's also an enormous amount of resistance. Right. And what you hear people say is, of course I believe in solar energy, but I don't want to look at those things. I think they're ugly. Right. And a sense of a disconnect between our responsibility for our energy use and the fact that you may not want to look at it, but it's not, they look at it the same as mountaintop removal coal mining, and it's just not. Right. And so I think it takes a little while to sort of do the cultural interventions that you need in order to make the new way of doing things normal. Right.
And I think, kind of coming back to Vermontivate, I think that's the beautiful job that you do, where it's, engaging people through playing and increasing the mass of people who become more and more aware of, like, oh, what's this thing called Vermontivate and what does it teach us? So what are some of the things that people who are right now playing Vermontivate doing? And just before you answer that, I want to remind our viewers that we are live on Earth Day. And you can call us at the number right at the bottom of your screen. It's 802-651-0589. And ask us any question about Vermontivate, how to play next time, because it's almost ending, right?
We're in the 5th week. It's a 6-week game, but it's not too late to sign up. Okay. And the site will stay live after the game is over. And so if people are curious, they're interested, they want to take on some of these challenges and figure out how to make it work in their lives, they're absolutely welcome to do that.
And do you run the game once a year? So next spring you're going to be launching it again?
We've run the game once a year, although we're looking at the possibility of doing something this fall. Okay. Particularly around the theme of button up. Okay. Because, we try to make the first Saturday in November button-up day. It's the day everybody weatherizes their homes for winter. Right. And it's hard to get people involved. And it's easy to say, button up your home. But people say, well, I'm not sure how. I don't have the skills. What do I do? And we're thinking, well, maybe if we could gamify it a little bit, like with Vermontivate, and take people on a little curated path through the process of buttoning up their home,
that you can do.
It would make it a lot easier.
That would make a whole lot of sense. It would be so wonderful to give people ideas on how to button up their houses and kind of weatherproof.
Yeah, and to make it fun
Seal
and
up
playful.
their-
Yeah.
So tell us about the things that people are doing on Vermontivate right now.
Well, it's a fun thing because the game is in 3 acts. And Act 1 is all the little warm-up challenges, like join a team, post a photo of yourself on your profile, fill things out, say hello to your team, tell them what we ask people what their personal superpower is, their sort of everyday superpower. Some people say, I'm really enthusiastic, or I'm really good at convincing people to do things, or I'm a good organizer. It's those kind of everyday skills that you want to bring to a team effort. And then in Act 2, there are 4 challenge streams: food, energy, transportation, and team building, because we feel like having a strong team is really important to both winning the game, but also in your communities. When disruptive things happen, having strong relationships is the way we build resilience and the way to weather and respond to and recover from any kind of disruption. And so we feel like the team building piece is really important. So in the food challenges, we ask people things like, what's your secret guilty pleasure? Because we know it's important to eat healthy. We know it's important to eat local and organic, but we want to honor the fact that we have a lot available to us, and we don't want to be punitive, like don't eat pizza or don't eat ice cream. So to sort of call out and honor whatever your secret guilty pleasure is, we ask people about that. But then we ask them, have you ever grown any food? Maybe could you plant a few seeds of spinach, or could you plant maybe a little rosemary plant, and then name it and give it to a friend. And so it's not just go plant a 4x8 garden. Again, it'd be like too big an early step, but getting people familiar with the act of growing something.
Of growing food.
And then having it be a gift for someone else, because we that's a positive feeling. In the realms of transportation, we actually ask people to talk about how much do you drive? Calculate how much you're spending right now on maintaining and owning a car. And then start thinking about the idea of hybrid transportations. And that's not hybrid like a Prius, it's you don't have to leave your house the same way you arrive somewhere. So you might drive part of the way and then take a bus, or carpool and then bike, or walk and then bike and then bus. And so to have people start to break down what the components of their daily and weekly transportation patterns are. And think about, you don't have to just ride your bike everywhere. How do you replace a piece of that with a less carbon-intensive way of traveling? And then we ask people, okay, if you're going to walk a little bit more, you're going to ride your bike a little bit more, you're going to take the bus a little bit more, spiff up whatever you use to do that. So get some fancy new shoelaces, or paint your bike helmet, or make a little cool holder for your bus pass, and make however you're going to do this more fun. Or in the realms of energy, we ask people, they do a little energy assessment profile online. And then we tell people, okay, then just save as much energy as you can in one day. You don't have to know anything about how to do it, but turn out lights or unplug things and just see what's possible. And then we start getting into greater details around, well, did you know that any charger plugged into a wall is drawing energy even if the light's not on?
Even if it's off,
Or if there's anything that has a light or an LED display is drawing energy even if it's off. So your computer or your phone or your DVR player or your clock. So think about what you might modify in your life to stop those little sort of vampire loads from drawing energy. And then people can start thinking about the bigger stuff, like look at your appliances. Are they energy efficient? Are they Energy Star rated? Don't throw everything out right away, but if you know that something is going to have to be replaced, think about how you might replace it. So it's sort of this sort of overall life assessment of like, what can I do that's
building
a little bit better?
Little by little.
And how do I share this with everybody else? And so we're always asking people to tell their personal story, to post a picture, post on Front Porch Forum about what they're doing, write to their town paper. They get points. If they write a letter to the editor, it gets published, they get points for it. But we also have whimsical stuff. Like we have something called kudos cards, which are a little downloadable postcard that basically is congratulating somebody for doing something awesome. And there's a big space where you can write and say specifically what it is. So we've had people give a kudos card to their neighbors for putting up solar panels, or drop one in somebody's panniers if they rode their bike to the store.
Oh, that's so great.
It's like positive reinforcement. And I've always felt like if there was one thing that could make more positive change faster in the world, it would be handing people postcards congratulating them for doing something excellent.
I love that idea. You're making me think like, oh, I'm going to start giving people thank you notes for everybody who I see with the solar panel, or doing something that I know makes a difference. So.
You know, we've also have a challenge about idling. Because of course, idling is just a huge waste of energy, it's a huge waste of money, and it's putting pollutants in the atmosphere for no good reason at all. Where we see idling probably the most often is at schools,
right,
where parents are dropping their kids off or picking them up and they're idling their cars, they're waiting. And so there were a group of kids from Essex Middle School who decided that they were going to do a big anti-idling campaign as part of Vermontivate. And so they went out to after-school pickup with clipboards and did surveys with people asking them why they were idling and did they know how polluting it was and was there any way they'd be able to stop. We had one person one year go to after-school pickup with a bag of lollipops, and she would walk around to people who were idling and ask them to turn off their car, and if they would, she'd give them a lollipop. More positive reinforcement.
Right.
And so what's great is that a lot of times we'll say, here's the issue we're thinking about, whether it's idling or local food or too much, you know, energy use or conservation, but we'll say to people, what would work best for you in your life? You get creative, you figure it out. Because we don't know you, we don't know what's best for you. So when we tell people things like, think about one way you could drive one day less per week, or how could you reduce your use of your car? We had a woman in Montpelier say, you know what? If I left work just a little bit early, I could come home and park and then walk to school to pick up my son, and we could walk to his whatever his after school events were going to be rather than my driving. So all she had to do was leave home 15, 20 minutes, leave work 15 or 20 minutes early, and all of a sudden she could completely shift her day around, and it was walking time with her son. It was bonding time with her son, and he, you know, her son happens to be an incredibly sweet kid who'd want to spend time with anyway. Aww. And so it's great to see how people are modifying things for their own lives.
Well, and what you're saying then is that the game itself is not prescriptive, it's just kind of inspiring, and it gives you ideas of how you might think about things. So so that's really wonderful.
Well, we want to meet people where they are. We wanted this to be a game that was fun for a wide range of ages and experience levels. If you were a kid or an adult, or you'd been living off the grid for 30 years, or you'd never done anything, we wanted there to be something for everybody. And meeting people where they are is one of the most important ways to do that.
And tell me about, because this is one big thing that I've done now for a number of years, and I've shifted my life, is what I pour down the drain. So household cleaners, shampoo, soap, deodorant, all of those things. I've gotten rid of everything that's just kind of a truckload of chemicals. And I did it for health reasons to begin with. And then I realized, oh, I'm not pouring all this stuff down the drain. So is that also some of the, do you get into that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We had a whole challenge around baking soda and vinegar, because talk about two miraculous substances and what you can do with them. And so we sent people to a vinegar website and just said, go take a look, see what's possible, because you have no idea how much vinegar can do. And so the challenge was just do something with vinegar. Because again, we don't know what your life is, whether you want to clean your jewelry or your bathroom or your toilet or brush your teeth, whatever it would be. And so people, what they came up with was varied a lot depending on what they needed to do in their lives. We also had a make your own toothpaste challenge, because a lot of commercial toothpaste has chemicals and sugar, and it's not good for you at all, and most toothpaste containers aren't recyclable. So if you make your own toothpaste out of baking soda and water and a little mint flavoring or whatever it might be.
Peppermint extract.
And then you've got the box for the vinegar, for the baking soda, but you're making your own just a little bit at a time, and you can create it to suit you. We also had make your own face cream, make your own shampoo. So there's a lot of DIY stuff that people can do. And that's always fun to see what they come up with.
So exporting Vermontivate, is there anybody outside of Vermont doing Vermontivate or participating?
Oh yeah, we've had players from outside of Vermont every single year. People invite their friends and their family from Florida, from Washington, D.C. One of our hardcore Vermontivators this year is from New Jersey.
Oh,
She's the sister of one of the players from Calais, and she is going gangbusters. And so she just handed out kudos cards to everybody on her town's green team because she wanted to thank them for all the great work they were doing.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
But our big goal is to be able to market it nationwide. I think we're probably going to have to change the name. Likely Vermontivate is not going to fly in New Hampshire or Texas. So we've got to come up with some sort of generic out-of-the-box version of the game. But I know, I've been talking to the Institute for Sustainable Communities in Montpelier, and they're in touch with sustainability people from municipalities all over the country. And they're hungry for
Right.
ways that they can engage their communities.
And it's the little things.
Yeah.
So before we run out of time,
Yeah.
I want to be sure to show our viewers how to find the Vermontivate website. And I also added the Earth Day website since it's Earth Day. So the Vermontivate website is vermontivate.com, and you can sign up to play, or you can follow the game. There are lots of cool characters. You can check out all the different teams. It's actually kind of a fun website just to visit and poke around. And the Earth Day Network, just so you can learn how to participate in Earth Day, either today or next year or for the rest of your life, and learn about little things that you can do. You can visit that at earthday.org. So we have a few more minutes. Is there anything that you're just burning to say and you haven't said about Vermontivate or about Earth Day?
Wow, that's a really great question. I think I would love, even like I said, even though it's the 5th week of the game, I'd love for people to get on, poke around, play. If you're not signed up, you can't see the challenges themselves, but you can see what people have been doing. And when people take on one of the challenges, they have to go out into the world, take the action, but then they write about it on the site. They talk about what they've done, they post photos, they post video, and sharing those stories is one of the most powerful things that we can do. And so I would say get on there, check out what the middle schoolers have been doing. The team captain in Montpelier is a 7-year-old kid named Jasper.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that.
And he loves the world, he loves trees, he's so passionate about it. And you know, he'll say things like, I think idling is terrible, and I want the governor to come to my school and tell everybody not to idle their vehicles. And to see the passion that all of our players bring to this. And like I said, most of these folks had not done all that much before. There are people who joined the Calais team who just moved to the community and were looking for something to do and felt like, oh my God, here's this incredibly active group of people who are making a difference. And I think I always want people to know that it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you know. It doesn't matter what you've done before. There's always action you can take, because climate change is an all-hands-on-deck situation. We need everybody. And you don't have to all of a sudden become Amish.
No. So, and I think that's the note to cap it all off with, is that it's enormous, like you said at the beginning, and so it requires each one of us taking a little bit of action. You know, we don't have to wait for anybody to solve it for us. And my motivation also having you here is that we mostly talk about personal health, but none of us can thrive if our planet isn't thriving. So we all need to participate. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for inspiring all of us to take little baby steps, because together we can do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. Happy Earth Day.